Rusty,
Yeah, hi Dan.
how are you doing?
Everything's okay up here in Chiang Mai. How about yourself?
Real good. Hey, Rusty, is it okay if I record this call?
Sure.
Oh, cool. I want to put it on my YouTube channel as we talked about in email.
No problem.
Cool. So you're in Chiang Mai, and of course, for new listeners or people that don't know, Chiang Mai is in Thailand. How long have you lived there in Thailand, Rusty?
Well, I've been a pretty much permanent resident in Thailand for 21 or 22 years.
Wow. And how did you pick Thailand?
Well, I was working in India jet boating on the Ganges River and spending a lot of time in Nepal, trekking in the Himalayas, and a lot of time in Indonesia. I'm a scuba dive master, so I spent a lot of time down there diving and snorkeling, and I started to think, maybe I ought to find a place to live somewhere over here. And Thailand, at that point especially, that would be some 20 or 30 years ago, was making it very easy to acquire a retirement visa. So I started coming to Thailand and looking around, and I really enjoyed myself. I started off by visiting the islands. So I spent a lot of time on Koh Tao, which 30 years ago, 25 years ago, was one of the most wonderful places a person could go. So one thing leads to another, and I decided that I think I would try living here in Thailand, and basically it's worked out just fine.
And Rusty, what is your home country?
The United States.
And while we're on the subject of visa, how have things changed? Are you currently under the current visa requirements for retirement, or are you got grandfathered in some way?
I think the answer would be yes to both of those. I have had a retirement visa now for 20 years. I'm 71, so when you turn 50, you can get a retirement visa, and that's what I did. And it's very easy now for me. I understand for new applicants, it's a bit more difficult, but still it's not very difficult.
Okay.
And like my renewal, it costs me $50 a year to have a retirement visa, and it takes, nowadays with fewer tourists here, and in Chiang Mai we have brand new immigration facilities, it has been taking between 1.5 and 2 hours in total to get my visa renewed. So it's really quite simple.
And that's annually, and it's cost $50.
That's correct.
And what's the information you provide?
Let's see. I am required to keep 800,000 baht in a Thai bank. So I must go to the bank, and I must get a letter from the bank stating that I have that money in there and that it has been there all year. And that costs about 50 baht at the bank for the letter. That would be about $1.75. And it takes, again, this has speeded up tremendously over the years. So I think this past year it took, maybe 25 minutes to acquire that letter.
And how much and for those who don't know the Thai baht value, about how much is that in dollars in the bank?
It's just slipped below the 30 mark, so it's 29.8 or 9 right now. The Thai baht continues to strengthen because it's based on the U.S. dollar strength, which is the U.S. dollar is weakening.
So how many U.S. dollars do you need to keep in a Thai bank?
Well, that would be somewhere around 27 or 28,000 U.S. dollars.
Okay. And someone new, is that the same thing? They would just prove that money in the bank, or is there additional stuff they need?
There is alternatives. You actually don't have to provide anything in a Thai bank if you don't want to. you then must provide proof of income. And I'm not sure of the specifics of proof of income, but I did speak to my my stockbroker about it, and I'm not sure that their willingness to provide records would satisfy the Thai immigration. So if one was going to take that route, one would have to look into it a little bit more closely.
Okay. Yeah, I'd heard that they want the U.S. Embassy or something to certify it, but I'm not up so much on what the current things are. They've been changing so much lately. But thanks for that initial understanding of the potential of proving income and also or having a bank deposit. That's very much appreciated.
There's another piece of information that might help your subscribers.
Okay.
If you apply for your visa outside of Thailand, there is a different set of requirements than if you apply for it inside of Thailand. I applied for mine inside of Thailand a long time ago, so I am not required to have medical insurance, even though I do have it.
I see.
Many people now are required to have medical insurance in order to obtain the visa. The rules are not consistent throughout either Thailand nor consulates and embassies around the world. So you really need to check with the one you're going to use for the requirements.
Great advice, Rusty. And then also, since you mentioned insurance, so you have health insurance in Thailand. Is that cover you only in Thailand, and how much does it cost?
I have Aetna of Thailand, which is Aetna of America, with a Thai. They formed a Thai company over here by buying Bupa, and my health insurance is hospitalization only, 100% coverage, and it covers me in every country in the world except the United States.
Great. And how much is it?
Last year it was $3,350.
Great information. And you said you were 70?
71.
71. Okay. So you're running under $300 a month for hospitalization in everywhere but the United States. And that's
correct. That is correct. And it's so easy to use. The Aetna it's so darn easy to use. I had an operation last year. You check into the hospital and show them your card, and then they hand you a form that's written in Thai, and I have my Thai girlfriend read it to make sure that I'm not giving them my house or something, and you sign the form, and that's it. You don't pay for anything.
That's great. Now, you mentioned that you live in Chiang Mai, and that normally, by the way, to the listeners, I'm referring to an email, and that you normally spend part of the year either in the islands of Thailand these days, or you head down to Indonesia during the burn season. Tell us a little bit about how that's changed because of the COVID situation.
We're stuck here. We would be in southern Thailand on an island on the west coast, or we would be in Indonesia now, because I just looked at the pollution today. The AQI right now is 152, and the PM 2.5 is 57.1. So we really can't go outside without a PM 2.5 3M mask. So yes, that's the big problem that we now face in Thailand, and this has gotten worse over the years, is the burning season used to be only bad in March and April, so we would just go to Indonesia, where we used to get a 60-day visa on arrival. Now we only get a 30-day visa on arrival, and during the COVID, we really can't go anywhere.
Right, so you're stuck in Chiang Mai, is what you're saying, and the burn season is longer now. And so, to give people a background, instead of tilling the soil, farmers burn the rubbish off the top of the soil, and it creates smoke in the valley in Chiang Mai. And am I describing that correctly?
You are describing that correctly, and if you add to that Take Bangkok, for example, a place where I rarely, if ever, go. They also have terrible problems with the pollution from the emissions from vehicles. So they're having very, very bad, it's often worse than Chiang Mai pollution in Bangkok.
Right. And so this is for you at least, not being interested in Bangkok per se, the problem is the mobility is gone because of COVID-19. So it sounds like what you're saying is that when those conditions are no longer there, in whatever way that happens, you'll be flying to the south somewhere during the smoke months and just avoiding it completely.
Pretty much. I should clarify one point. As of today, I could go to the airport and get on an airplane and I could fly to southern Thailand with no restrictions whatsoever. But what we want to do is get in our lovely Ford EcoSport and pile some of our kayaks in there and some of our other toys and beach chairs and my lapidary equipment and drive to southern Thailand. We cannot do that without being quarantined in different provinces that are having a COVID outbreak. So if I wanted to just go to the airport and fly, I could do that today. If I wanted to do what we want to do, which is to take our toys with us, we cannot.
Well, that's a great clarification. So someone like myself who just carries a backpack and one check thing everywhere in the world, I could just fly down to the islands and during the smoke season, and you're deciding not to do that because you want your toys with you. Is that right?
That is correct.
Wow,
that
great.
is correct. And I also have many friends on Koh Tao and other islands. And here's a tip for anybody who's in this area at all. This is the greatest time in years to visit these places. There's almost no one there, and some of the businesses are open, and the ones that are open are so darn happy to see you that they've reduced the room rates. I see pictures from friends sending me, the beaches are still swept clean, and everyone, they're so happy to see you instead of, Thailand has had a wave of mass tourism, and this really is hard for the people to deal with, and they get to where, oh, you're just another tourist, we want your money and that's it. Not anymore. They're so darn happy to see you, they can't help themselves.
Another great piece of information, Rusty. Thank you so much. So, Rusty, you mentioned you have a girlfriend. What are your thoughts? A lot of expats, men especially, want to go to Thailand and fall in love and live happily ever after on a beach somewhere under a palm tree. What are your thoughts about that? Is that still something that is hopeful for people?
It's a funny subject because I'm not the average guy who shows up here in Thailand. Remember, I lived a very adventurous life. I was a whitewater river outfitter in the United States and a ski bum. So I've always lived outdoor adventure, and I provided rescue services for filmmaking companies when they were filming whitewater stunts. So that left me with an interest in filmmaking. So when I got over here to Thailand, I looked around and I said, this would be a great place for me to start my amateur film world. So I bought some video cameras and started making these movies. And this one vegetarian restaurant where I used to eat, there was this really pretty Thai girl who always had a smile and always had a positive attitude working in this restaurant. So I asked her one day, I said, would you like to be my location scout? I need somebody to go up in the country and stay in a hotel and get to know the local people and find out someone who has a truck who can transport us and where we can eat and this and that. And she looked at me like, yeah, right, it's going to be you and me in some hotel room, right? And I said to her, oh, no, I'm not going to go. I'm just going to give you a budget and you go. And she went, whoa, okay, I can do that. So she went on to be my photographer and location scout in half a dozen films, and we became friends. And one day sitting in the truck, I said to her, I said, look, the last thing in the world that I need is a really pretty 23-year-old Thai girlfriend. So let's just go on like we are. You work for me, and we go on these adventures, and when we get a hotel, you get your room, I get mine, everything's okay. Well, that worked fine for a few years, and then all of a sudden we spent more and more time together, and we have now lived together for 6 or 7 years.
Wow, great story.
Well, it's important because if you plan to come over and find a bar girl and sit on the beach, you will get bored to death and you will not get along unless you're both alcoholics. But if you do interesting things, you will meet interesting people wherever you go.
Great advice. Great advice. And it's advice that some people won't hear until they've been there for a year or two. But it's planting that seed in their mind. If they wake up bored in 6 months or a year, then they can start a real life. So good on you for saying that, Rusty. Thanks for watching part 1 of our video where the 20-year retired Rusty talks about why he still loves being retired in Thailand. In part 2 of the video, Rusty will explain his expenses for living in Thailand in retirement, including his $200 a month apartment. Just click the link in the notes below this YouTube video to watch part 2. The video you've been watching while Rusty and I talk about his 20-year retirement in Thailand is of Chung and I as we toured around Chiang Mai, Thailand. Click the link in the notes below this YouTube video to see all the tours and food and everything we ate. There's a web page for you there with all that information. Thanks for watching.